Thank you very much. Glad to be here. It's a real privilege to be invited and to join such an illustrious panel. Thank you for it. I guess I'd like to sort of frame my conversation, I suppose, with a personal belief, which is that I believe that almost all organisational culture is flawed. It's true that some organisations are better than others, but if it were not the case that the organisational culture wasn't flawed, then there would be, for instance, no gender pay gap. There would be more female CEOs. Minority ethnic groups would be more represented in the C-suites. There'd be no such things as institutional racism and other workplace discriminations and inequalities. And wider, there'd be no such things as 0 hours contracts. There'd be no plastics in our seas and rivers, no other environmental degradations on a massive scale, etc., etc. So, and further, because if you think about this, all human endeavour is organised, then if you sort out organisational culture, then you can save the world. And I think it's without a doubt the society that is emerging post-pandemic demands, doesn't it, that business itself is kinder, is fairer, is more equal. And it's in that equality where diversity and inclusion plays its part. And then, well, that's a sort of macro view, isn't it? But this diversity and inclusion journey, it starts with yourself. I'm sure most may have heard, well, it's attributed to the Bible, but it's actually a Greek proverb, which is "Physician, heal thyself." And it's a famous proverb, and it sort of asks, doesn't it, that we should each take a look in the mirror, and in context of diversity and inclusivity, are there any personal behaviours or biases, if you like, that negatively affect the potential for your organisation to be more inclusive, more fairer, and more equal? And so the conversation is about culture. What is the sort of culture that you're trying to establish? And if I could also go on from there to a sort of personal anecdote, because an even more personal thing is that the business I ran actually 2 businesses ago, to be honest, I spectacularly fell out with my fellow shareholders in this business that we'd started together. I was the managing director, and what started as minor boardroom disputes over the direction of the enterprise sort of turned into a power struggle, really. And that culminated after 18 months in a very public firework display of, well, what can only be described as red hot emotions on the office floor in front of everybody who worked for us. We could have probably sold front row seats. And this is where I started my journey to being an author, really. But there was no going back from that. The aftermath threatened the security of the young family I had at the time. It certainly disrupted the culture and the highly valued team we'd put together. It cost us all a small fortune in legal fees. And that business turned to ashes in the fire that ensued. Now, could we have done things differently? Absolutely, of course we could. Knowing how to, that's a totally different matter. And one of the questions I kept asking myself in the period of reflection that followed is did my partners in the business have a position in their argument that was at least as valid as mine? And it took me a long time to reach any position on this. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, I can confirm that yes, they probably did, but I was just ignoring that for lots of different reasons and lots of different prejudices. Now, as it transpires, that is an actual that's a psychological phenomena. The thing about disagreement is it escalates when you try and sort it out, and research shows that people in dispute typically assume their own motivations are true and just, and the deadlocks that prevent everyone moving forward are likely to be blamed on the other side by both sides, which is mad, isn't it? And that's called attribution bias. So we actively seek out evidence supporting our position in the argument, our worldview, and we ignore the negative opinions of those on the other side of the debate, especially if, and this is really, really revealing, especially if they are in some way, shape or form different to us. Gender is obviously differences, race differences, ideological differences, etc., etc. So that psychological phenomenon known as attribution bias is one way in which our prejudices are reinforced. So that set me off on this personal journey of looking into my own personal biases that stopped me from creating a positive culture. I went on from that business to found as a joint venture with a major media conglomeration called Dentsu, who are based in Tokyo. And we grew that business into, 32 markets. And we ended up employing nearly 40,000 people. So diversity, inclusivity became a sort of watchword for me, but I had to go on quite a tremendous and fairly epic journey of self-discovery before I was able to get to that position in life. So hopefully we'll get into, there'll be an opportunity to share more about that as we enter the debate, but I just wanted to frame the conversation there.